First thing to do is act on the agenda.
I move that we act on the agenda as written.
I second it.
Sorry, just me.
Oh, sorry.
This is probably a slight amendment. Cindy is here to talk about hazard mitigation stuff, but she's also gonna talk to you guys a little bit about the grants and aid program, because we have steps to take for the next round of all of that.
And the hazard mitigation piece is directly related to MERC.
Okay, so that's on the, okay. and
Okay,
that's-
so you may want to kind of do those together.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we'll add that under C along with,
You
Hazard
however you
mitigation?
want to handle it, but that would be
Yep.
best
That
as
work?
a combined discussion.
so I make a motion to add that under new business.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next thing to do is act on the minutes of
I
March
move-
24.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment? No public comment?
Beautiful.
All right. So next is item 5, Cemetery Commission, Middletown Cemetery Driveway. Hank.
I've been waiting for 4 years to fix the entrance into the Middletown Cemetery. Now, some of you were sitting here last year, and I brought the subject up, and I was told that, well, we'll fix it this summer. And remember what I said before hell freezes over? Well, hell froze over because it hadn't been fixed yet.
Hank, we did get a bid on that from,
So from what I understand, they're gonna repave the road just below the cemetery, and they're gonna put a bunch of culverts in there, and they're gonna put a bunch of culvert in there. And according to what I found out, that Palmer Goodrich has got the contract to do that. Well, 4 years ago, when they asked the town, and they said, oh yeah, you gotta fix it, but nobody had the time to do it, so they said, hire somebody. So Palmer Goodrich is one of the people that looked at the job. But then, all the years through, we've been waiting to fix High Bridge. The state decided to give us the money to fix that. So that, of course, that's gonna mess the road up and everything. And so I said, well, we can wait till next year. Well, the following year, we had the flood and the roads got destroyed. So you can't ask the town to put any money in to that, you gotta save the roads. The guys did an excellent job. Roads are great. So this past summer came along and so I says, well, it's easy, they had no big projects. So they said they were gonna do it. Well, summer went by and it didn't get done. So I can understand if they can't do it with a backhoe, they have to hire an excavator. But nobody said anything. They said they were gonna fix it, didn't get fixed. So now there's gonna be an excavator right down the street. The same guy that looked at the job is gonna be doing that job. So I can't see any reason why they can't fix that entrance to the cemetery.
can I let you know that we did get a bid from Palmer for that very job?
Specific.
And we have it specifically for that job, and it is on the list.
Oh, good, because he looked at it and, because I never disclosed this to anybody, he didn't write it out because we hadn't got that far yet, but he verbally told me what he had charged to fix it. And it was $3,500. But that was 4 years ago. So everything, of course, everything's gone up. So as long as that's gonna, because that's town property,
Right.
you know, and, because the cemetery is not till you.
And we are looking into it, and we do
Yeah.
have a bid for it, so it is on the list to be done along with the rest of the culverts. Maybe Josh can weigh in on this. Is that how you understand it as well?
That's how I believe when Palmer's
Okay.
done doing
Right.
those 3 culverts. If
Right.
you so say to go ahead and do it, he would move up.
Move on to
there,
that.
do that when he's right here in town.
So,
So, yeah, about that, I could have talked about it, public comment, but I said, we're gonna talk about the cemetery, we're gonna talk about the cemetery. We have a tree problem that's gonna, I already hired the guy that's worked on this before. He wanted to come in the middle of winter, but he was from Windsor, and there's no snow over there. I said, you can't, there's 2 feet of snow over there, you can't get in there. anyway, he'll be here shortly. And what we're going to do, I wanted to do this before, is in the Hill Cemetery, the section where there's no stones, where, and I got, here's pictures of the overhang. We had that tree. Imagine if that fell, that hit the headstones, that tree there. That's in the Hill Cemetery. Robert gonna cut it up. We're gonna move it on Thursday. But that's all. So Ted looked at this job with no headstones in the way. He could do the whole thing with the boom truck. Leave the firewood, get a chipper and chip it over the bank. And that'll clean it. Sooner or later, we're gonna have to put headstones in there, and those trees are hanging over there.
Yep.
Pretty bad. So now's the time to do it before there's any headstones in the way. And he's also gonna go up to East Hill Cemetery, on the property that Mrs. Pond gave us. The back corner of that is all grown in. So I already talked to Mr. Bliss, and he said we could chip the chips into his woodlot. So he's gonna go over and knock that job off at the same time. So then maybe we can get somebody with a backhoe to stump it. It's mostly brush. It's about 8 or 10 small trees, 6, 8-inch trees. That's gonna be the stumps. We're gonna clean that up so that it'll be a cemetery someday. Because there's about 2.5 rows left in that cemetery. And we're gonna have to plan on putting a fence around it by law. So that's gonna cost some money. So I can't see why we can't sack a few bucks away every year for that project. And I already talked to Mrs. Pond about it, and suggested what kind of fence to put there. And I thought common chain link fence to keep the cattle out, but she thought it ought to have something better than that. And I said, well, so do I. And I said, well, we'll start salting some money away and put a nicer fence to protect from the cattle. And so that project is, we gotta start salting some money away to do that. And there's no markers on those cemeteries and I'm not putting a street sign that says the name of the cemetery. That's bush. I think what we could do, and I already talked to a couple of people that would engrave some stones and put a large stone. So once that stone is set there with don't have to use the word cemetery, just hilltop, name the cemetery. I mean, East Hill Cemetery. And it's there forever. You'll never have to paint it. It won't be here. They'll be there until the planet blows up. Because you start putting signs up that wear out, they could paint, and then you gotta paint them. If you tried to price us what it costs to have a sign made today, it's unbelievable.
So might I add you so we can continue this conversation at another time, that you maybe write all this down so that it's in a letter form for us so we can, follow through on, or follow what it is that you're,
Well,
what
I
your
wanted
thoughts
to
are.
give you, find out, I says, we don't get any money to run a cemetery. Forever, it was $3,000, $3,000. And now most of it, I have to contract for the lawnmower here. Oh yeah. If you go back to, I took an old book out. It says, so get me out one of the old books. Well, what year you want? It says, let's go to 2000. The world was supposed to blow up. The computers were supposed to blow up. Pull that one out, right?
But hey,
You know what? No, we're gonna talk about this.
No, we're sticking to the Roberts rules, and you're going over your allotted time. So there's only so much time we can put into each one of these
Well, I
agenda
want you to-
items.
We're gonna ask the town for more money for the cemetery,
Okay,
all right?
more funding.
Because I haven't got the money to get the trees fixed. They don't give me any money.
Right.
We're doing it for free.
Have you reached out to look for grant applications and things like that the cemetery commission can look for? Other funding. I looked that up because I knew that one of the things is that we need more money for the cemetery fund, and it said that the cemetery commissioner often in the small towns of Vermont will look for funding outside of the town, and some of the ways that they can do that is to get grants. And there are grants out there, but it would be grants that you would apply for. One of them is called the Vermont Old Cemetery Association grant application. I actually have it right here, and it talks about how it would be, I believe it's a matching grant, but I'm not positive. So that, for instance, if something costs $3,000, they would match at $3,000. But I don't know that much about it because it is something that the cemetery commissioner applies for. So if you were interested in that, I do have it here.
Oh, yeah, we sent they did this a few years ago. The state was gonna give us some money to take care of the trees. Right? But it had to be ash trees.
Okay, and I understand that, but what I'm asking you, so that we can move forward with the rest of our agenda, is this something you would like to look at? Would you like to take
Yes,
this?
yes,
Okay.
if there's a boy to
All
get free money,
yours.
of course you want that.
Yeah, so then I encourage you to look into this as the commissioner.
Tell you what, I'll
Cemetery
swap you,
commissioner.
I'll swap you this or that.
Sounds great.
You have to have, another one of that letter, and that's the contract for the mowing the grass, the cemetery.
Okay, and that's not on our agenda, so I don't know because we didn't place it.
No, but just give it to her.
Yeah, okay.
She's the
Thank you.
boss.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just, you look in that book and you look in the 2,000, you know what they paid to mow the grass here in the town? $350 for the year. Now they get $2,000 to do it. What's the cemetery changed? Nothing.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next. Act 181 and flood.
Oh, wait a minute, there's one more thing I want to talk about. This really sticks me bad.
Well,
No,
You've gone
no, you
over
gotta
your
listen to
time.
this.
Hank,
okay?
Because this-
everyone is
we are
allowed 5
not
minutes.
going to have people yelling at us here. It is not going to happen. And you've gone over your 5 minutes and you're wanting to yell at us.
All right, I want to be on the next agenda, we're going to talk about another cemetery.
We
Okay,
can do that.
Hank, yelling's not gonna get you anywhere.
No.
You gotta relax.
It's not. And I'm trying to be helpful. I'm looking up things that might be helpful for you.
Well, help me.
Right.
Help the poor people that's in the,
that's what we're helping
That's what
with.
we're trying.
that are getting buried by the snow loader. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay. We move on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Jason. I'm with the Mount Escutney Regional Commission. Some of you are new to the board, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with us. If you're going through the old town records, you may see we used to have a different name, Southern Windsor County Regional Planning Commission. We
Okay.
changed our name a few years ago. So we exist to provide technical assistance to towns. So we do a lot of different things: mapping, grant writing, town plans, zoning. Cindy does a lot of our brownfields work and hazard mitigation planning work and other things. Really, we just wanted to be a resource to you all. So at any point, call us. There's 14 of us that work there. Please feel free to call any of us at any point if you have questions. We just want to be helpful. I wanted to talk really quickly about 2 things and then hand it over to Cindy. So Act 181 probably won't be as impactful for Andover as it is for larger towns, but this was a law that got passed last year. We passed out a 2-page summary just for your reference. this was referred to as the Act 250 bill last year. And so there's a lot of changes that are in this bill that we have to do, so our regional plan now has a little bit more teeth, if you will. The way we map village centers and the neighborhoods surrounding them are going to tie directly into the state designation programs. You don't have any of these, but so Chester has a designated village center, for example, they're not going to have to reapply to the state anymore. The way we map it with them, we'll get automatic designation. Andover doesn't have one of those things. I'm not sure if it's a great fit for you, but if you want to talk more about it, you certainly can do that. And then part of those, the larger towns, the village centers and the surrounding neighborhoods are going to get Act 250 exemptions. And again, I don't really think this applies to you, but we can certainly talk more about that if you'd like to. So over this next year, we're working on our regional plan, and we want to really work very closely with with your planning commission, in particular, to just make sure we're talking through how we map things and make sure we get it right. And we're more than happy to come back and talk to you folks about what we come up with. And if there's questions about whether you want a village center designation or other things, we can talk a lot more about it. But I really just want to give you that quick overview and see if there's any questions at this point. It's more impactful for our larger towns, but are there any questions?
Does your department, does Mark have anything to do with the town plan as well? Or is that, it does?
Yeah, so at a bare minimum, we review it at the end after the planning commission's prepared it, and we just kind of make sure it meets all the requirements. But typically, and Martha's been working with the planning commission on that municipal planning grant application, but typically we like to help you write it and bring it to the finish line. So it really depends on how much help you want from us, but soup to nuts, we'd like to help you out with that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So that's Act 181. I want to talk really quickly about flood regs, if I could.
Sure.
Andover's had what we call the flood damage prevention regulations were last adopted in 2007. The town has been enrolled in the National Flood Insurance Program since 1985, I believe the year was. Those two things are really what make residents eligible for flood insurance. And the regulations that were adopted in 2007, to me, are really unclear. They're not great. FEMA is updating their flood maps right now. We've, assuming that they will continue to exist and finish that process, we'll have some new maps in a couple of years. And we have a grant right now to look at towns' flood regs to just make sure that they're up to snuff. And we'd love to just look at those with you or with the planning commission and just those with them, and just make sure that they're up to snuff. And we want to run that by you and see if that's of interest.
So the goal is to make sure that we have up-to-date flood regulations that will meet the requirements for us to get help if we need it with flood, and also to sort of mitigate the likelihood of experiencing damage when high rains and floods occur. Is that right?
That's right. Your existing regulations may be okay as is, but we'd like to just look at it in a little more detail and make sure. What's likely to happen is, we're going to probably look at the state's current model regulations, and they do go a bit above and beyond the minimum requirements. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk to you about whether some of those items are good or bad or otherwise. Their model includes not only the flood protections, but also the river corridor protections, which you currently have. So we would just walk through those sort of optional items, if you will, with you all and see what works.
And is that something you do with the planning commission primarily? Or?
Yeah, so the planning commission's role is to prepare these kinds of regulations. They have a public hearing, then they bring it to you. Then the select board has a hearing, and You're enabled to adopt them yourselves, but you also can decide to send it to a town meeting if you so choose. So, you know, it would be lovely to have both boards involved to some extent or the other, but whatever is going to work best for you all. So does that sound worth doing?
Go ahead.
And so does your involvement in all of that, looking over it, does that involve a grant?
Like about mitigate, I don't even know how we would get involved in flood mitigation in our town.
If you adopted new flood regs, you're asking, would you therefore be required?
Yeah.
Mitigation, I'd say no, but you know, in terms of administering the regulations, I'd say yes. You know, if you have regulations, you should be administering them. You should be, you know, if somebody's not following the rules, you should follow up with them on it.
I guess I don't know enough about it to even, I don't know, like, what percentage of the town, I mean, luckily a lot of Andover is higher up. We're still vulnerable to flooding on our roadways, but there is a lot of the town that is along rivers. I just don't know enough about it to even say anything.
According to this little report that's from the state, so you know, maybe it's not 100% accurate, there are 12 buildings in the flood hazard area.
Oh, that's good information for us.
12, you know, it's not a ton, and those properties, generally speaking, would need a permit under these flood regs to do renovations or additions, etc.
That wouldn't have already needed them.
Oh,
Am I correct in saying that to you? That those 12 buildings would now need a permit if we were to adopt new regs, but as is right now, they don't need a permit. But if we were to adopt new regs, they would need a permit? Is that what you're saying?
It's been a long time since I've looked at your flood regs. I believe they would need a permit today, and I don't think that would change. But again, we'd like to just look at the details a little bit more and get more into those.
but they would have legacy status under, because they already exist.
They would, and they already exist, so they're fine.
Yeah.
It's just when they go to do a new project, then they have
So a new building?
I understand.
a new
Okay.
building or renovations or additions.
So to circle back, what you're asking us is to just look over our regs and then come up with ideas whether or not you think that there's things that need to be changed. And if you do, if indeed you do look over our regs, it's not putting us in a position where we indeed will have to change them. It's just that you would give us ideas, am I correct?
Yeah, we review them, we give you folks recommendations, and then presumably we'd show you, hey, here's an alternative version, do you like it? And you can
Right.
then decide whether you want to adopt it or not.
Okay.
No harm, no foul either way.
We don't need to make a decision tonight, or do we?
Well, you'd like a decision tonight as to whether or not
It would
we
be,
want you to
you know,
look
and I don't
into
want to
it.
rush you, it can be next month, whatever, but it'd be nice to know if you want us to work on this with you.
So I'd like us all to look into it more as far as our regs go, and then bring it to a meeting in the future to let you know whether, you know.
I can send you a copy of what the current regulations are.
I think you have.
Have it?
I do, I think, I mean,
a couple of them have
right,
it.
I have it.
This is it right here.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
And I have it as well. So somebody must have, but Susan, you said that you weren't familiar with it. so-
I'm just not familiar with the whole conversation and what the mapping is for the town. If it's something that we can do to protect some properties in town, it seems common sense that we would do what we could and that we would do it with assistance. But once again, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I'm looking at it, I don't think it would change anything really, but we would look at it to make sure it's as clear and as understandable as it can be. And there are gonna be some optional items that, you know, we could talk about, which would add sort of more regulations to properties. And we can decide whether you like them or not. and again, there's no problem. I'm happy waiting. I'm also happy to come back with maps and other details, and we can talk about it in more detail.
Is that something you would go through the maybe you already said, go through the planning commission? Or are they kind of up to snuff on that?
Typically, we would go through the planning commission first, and certainly, maybe the select board's invited, maybe we have joint meetings, whatever works for you all. But yeah, typically we go through the planning commission, they end up coming up with a recommendation, and we would then help them bring it to you.
Yeah, that would, seems like a reasonable order of business in this situation for us, but I don't know.
So Jason, even if the regulations as they are or more or less stay the same, maybe just clarifying some things, you could still call that an update that we
Yes.
adopt, right? So now
Yep.
they're not 2007, they're
Right.
up to date, but.
Right.
Yeah,
Without a lot of
For
changes.
me, these regulations are hard to understand, and so if there's any way to clarify some things, or if we find some kind of a problem, we can address that at the same time. So my thought is, if nothing else, we'll just make it clearer and easier to understand.
So my question to the board would be, do we want to say, go ahead and make those suggestions to us now, or do we, as a collective group here, want to read our regs so we know what they say, and then let him know in, an upcoming meeting?
So I'll just say I tried to read the regs. I had them, it's like 15 pages or something, 16 pages of regs. Very detailed document. It's hard for me to, if I had to outline it, it would be challenging right now. And so realistically, am I going to study this over 4 or 5 hours and make a lot of notes and come to a better understanding? It's unlikely, actually. So I think what I'm hearing so far is that there's very little risk in engaging with an update.
Right.
Very little risk of additional cost or restrictions that we would not agree with. Is that your sense?
I agree with that, except that, do we know what the planning commission's point of view is on it? Like, have you talked to Joe or anybody about it in recent years?
A little bit. I think I'm looking at Jeanette. There's a couple of emails, right?
Joe didn't have a recollection of having dealt with them in the past, but that's how the process went last time, is the regional planning commission worked with our planning commission. They got up this just like they would with the town plan, and then once they had some new language and updated some things, they brought it to the select board for adoption. So it would be a similar process in my mind, from what I'm hearing, to how the town plan works. And just as Joe Schmo sitting over here, I don't know why you guys wouldn't boot this to the planning commission, quite honestly. Because I feel like
That's
you've
my
got money
first
on your
instinct, to
table.
tell you the truth.
Right, the question I have is, are we required to approve something in order for the planning commission to begin working with you?
I think that's a good question, that, do you need their,
Approval.
or, order, if
No, you
will,
direct
that
them.
yes,
They
that the
they
planning
work at
commission
your
should-
discretion.
Okay,
Okay.
So if
Yeah.
what you're saying, Rich, is should we make a motion and second it and have a vote about whether to encourage the regional planning commission to work with our planning commission to update said regulations, then the answer would be, I would think, yes, you
Yeah.
should do that to make it formal.
Okay, well, I would second that motion if
I
you're
can't
making that.
really say it though, the way.
I make a motion that, I'm sorry, now I've lost your name, I've forgotten your name.
Jason.
Jason looks into our flood regs and gives us recommendations through this program.
And I second that.
and
With-
working
With the planning.
With the planning commission.
Yeah.
That he reaches out to the planning commission.
Okay. Do we
I'll
need to
second it.
restate it? We're all good?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll reach out to the planning commission and
Okay.
go from there. Thank you.
We're all still learning.
We are.
All good.
Okay, moving on to the next item, hazardous material testing. Cindy?
Yes, and I think this was in relation to your grant project. I guess at some point during the audit, the energy audit, the auditor looked at the office here and also at the town hall, I guess you could call it. And in his initial look-see, I'm not sure what it is, where he found the possibility of vermiculite as a form of insulation, which is not uncommon in very old structures. But because of the age of the building, has very high probability of being asbestos. I was looking at the walls because, you know, sometimes you find that in the walls too, but this is all concrete walls.
Right.
So
Cindy, there's literally a cutout in the ceiling around the corner outside the bathroom door, and
Is
you
that where-
stick your head up in there and you are in vermiculite.
Okay, so
It's,
that's
I mean, she stuck her head up and went, oh, ooh, and climbed down.
yes, okay. So part of the plan is to insulate, re-insulate the roof of this building. So that would require, as it says in the grant, in the scope of work, that the vermiculite needs to be removed in order for them to blow in some kind of cellulose, I guess, type of insulation. So then, you know, the question came up, well, is it asbestos? And that's when we got brought into it with respect to our brownfields experience in our program and funding that we had to do just those kinds of things, to first of all do an assessment to see if in fact, you know, we have environmental professionals that we work with, a short list that we have, would come and get that material tested to verify whether it is or isn't. We don't know for sure. And if it is, then at that point, in order for you to proceed with the insulation, you would need to remove it. And again, this is something that we could consider funding as well. No idea really what it would cost if that is asbestos. I did a quick call before I came here of one of our environmental professionals. He's not, you know, he doesn't know either for sure, but it could be a 5-figure number, but it's not like $100,000 or $50,000, but it could be, you know, 10 or 20 or something like that. Again, we don't know, but this is something that we could consider funding as well. We would have to pass it by our Brownfield Steering Committee, and then the MARC board to approve the use of the funding for that mitigation.
And would it come out of the MERP grant?
No,
No, it would be additional funding. It
this
would
would be
come.
funding that would be provided through our EPA brownfields.
Okay, and you would work hand in hand with our construction people?
Yes, I would imagine, and that's a good question, I would imagine this would more or less have to be done before they come in here, because for the most part, I'd assume that they're not gonna wanna be around any of that stuff until it's been remediated.
Is it no longer a good practice to try to seal it off and leave it?
Well, you know, if it was stable, I'm not as familiar with, you know, when I think of vermiculite, you know, you think of stuff kind of blowing around in the air. It's probably the worst kind of asbestos contaminated material because the exposure is when you breathe it in. If there was a way to stabilize it so that neither the workers or even after the work is done, that anybody is exposed to it, then yes, I just don't know if that's possible, and I don't know if you're, you know, the contractor.
They do, they had, I mean, I'm not 100% positive on this, but we did speak with, and her name was Shelley, I can't remember her last name. And they did speak of doing that mitigation. But at the same time, I wonder if maybe the two of you could connect and if that would be a good idea. I'm just,
This is with Architect.
yeah, with Architect.
And they were talking about doing the work, doing the mitigation?
You know, I'd have to look at the old
Okay.
emails because there were so many that came in and I know that was something we had asked And they said that it was part of their scope, but I don't know if it was just to assess it or if it was actually to mitigate it. And I feel like it was to assess it, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't think it was,
I don't
they
think
said
it was
they
to
weren't
mitigate
certified
it.
for mitigation.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, I think Martha had asked specifically, and I don't know whoever's heading up this MERP program, as to whether or not the mitigation is an eligible cost.
Right.
Your grant.
And I don't think
And I
It
don't think
wasn't.
is.
No, she
Yeah.
said that it wasn't,
Okay.
but there were grants out there.
Okay.
She did send me, and
Well, again, Cindy's saying
but
that they
Cindy's
have
saying
the
that
funding.
they have funding,
Right,
so yeah.
we've got that funding.
And that may be what Martha was thinking of as well.
Okay.
Chris, you had a question?
You pretty much covered it. But the only thing in my limited research on vermiculite itself is not cancer causing.
Right.
The mines that vermiculite came out of were contaminated with asbestos. So there's trace amounts, and instead of the whole ceiling is not full of asbestos. But it also said not to seal it off and add insulation on top. It doesn't work that way, supposedly.
When you think that they're gonna be blowing
Right,
something
right.
into that, I mean, again, I
But
don't know for sure.
what you had said about us, the assessment, that's why we went with that particular, well, that's one of the reasons we went with that
Right.
particular contract. He said they could, that was within their scope, was to do
Well,
the
and that's an
assessment.
issue, because we already, I guess the daughter already sees this as a possible issue. What about the other building? The auditor didn't say anything, are you insulating that building as well?
You know, I have to look at the scope of work. I don't know.
Yeah, the attic has pink fiberglass insulation upstairs, and it was
okay.
And part of
about,
it,
it was about putting better insulation up there, and I think enclosing that all off, if I remember correctly, as well as the
Okay.
basement has the same issue where it's just pink fiberglass insulation stuffed in the ceiling, and it hasn't been
All
sealed
right, so
off
that's,
and around the windows and things.
or even though the structure's old, then it sounds as though it's been updated at some point, because
Right,
that
I think those things were added, maybe when they added the addition on the back, they may have gone through and done all of that.
That makes sense then, okay.
Yeah.
So then it would really just be this building,
So
or
would,
do you
That
want
was
that
that was
assessed?
my understanding. I don't recall anybody saying anything about there being concerns of hazardous materials over there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just this building,
Yeah.
and again, we got this brownfields program, so we had money. We can help you with it. I think we just need sort of your approval to have it assessed.
Yeah,
So-
to have it assessed and then we could go from there.
somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we have Mark help us with assessment of the hazardous material in this building.
Yeah, I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a little bit of a question. Can the town, can we close down the town office for a week or so? Or like, would Jeanette just
Where would I
take?
go?
Would you just take, well, I hope
Where
you
would I
wouldn't be
sleep?
here. Well, could you like take a computer and be in the other, and have like a
We have
strip
awesome
down?
internet over in the town hall, and that computer right there, I shouldn't say it too loud, but
Has everything.
everything that has anything to do with this town is in that laptop.
So you could actually close this building down
I sure could.
without,
Yep, and we could,
Okay.
I'm sure we have call forwarding, or we could do something, but people
That's a
can
good
always
question.
email, so I could still be reached, and I could still come to work every day. And I could still walk.
So I'll get in touch with our environmental professional, and it's usually like a 2-week timeframe. He'll come here, he'll take samples, they'll get tested, and once they get back, they provide a report. And that report can go to your
okay.
design engineer, and they would need
Okay.
to know.
Yes.
And then it would become part of the RFP for whoever you contract to actually do the work.
Okay.
So they know that it's, but, you know, if it's there and if it is, it needs to be remediated, then we'd have to talk about when and how much, and try to coordinate with your people.
Okay.
But this is a big relief that this is something we
That we can address.
really use help with. Thank you.
And that we can address, because
Yeah.
we have a lot of people in here, and Jeanette's in here every day.
Simple projects are so simple, so
Oh, no.
we can help.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
Thank you.
very much.
Okay, so, did you want to speak on anything else, or you all?
No, not with respect to that, unless you had other Oh, did you
Grants
want
and
to talk about, yeah, well, did you want to talk any more about MERP and MERP?
Are there any other questions about this MERP stuff that we can, we're not MERP yet, so but we'll try to answer questions, okay.
You want me to speak on grants and aid now?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you all familiar with the municipal roads general permit? Municipal, and kind of speaking off the top of my head here. This was part of, actually it started off as a clean water initiative, I'm gonna say about 5 years ago, or I don't know, maybe a little bit more.
Maybe plus.
Maybe plus.
Longer.
Yeah. And the purpose of this permit was to reduce the amount of sediment and phosphorus pollution that drains off of our roadways into our waterways. For Andover, and it does look at both paved and gravel roads. And what the permit does is it kind of breaks the roadways down into segments, and it determines whether or not a segment of roadway is what they call hydro-connected, meaning that the water that's coming off that road is directly going into some water body or waterway, like a river, stream, or wetland, pond, lake. And Andover has, and the segments, it's not just by road, it's by segments. I think they're 100 meters, yeah, 300 and some odd feet per segment. And Andover has like 750 road segments in town. And I'm gonna say, there's about 300 that are hydro-connected.
Okay.
325. I think it was 2018 or 19, all these segments were assessed, and that was back then called the road erosion inventory, where somebody, and it was probably us, right, came out and looked at the segments and went through an assessment to determine whether or not those segments met these standards. And the standards have to do with that the roads are properly graded, there's no berms, that there's a proper ditching, stone-lined or grass-lined, culverts are in good shape, things like that, so that the water is able to shed off the road, kind of go through, the ditches or the culverts, and if it's on its way to a waterway, that it's coming through as clean as it can because of the any sediment or phosphorus, which is within the sediment. So in 2018-19, when they were assessed, there was, and I wrote this down, 42% of the segments fully met standards and didn't require any kind of work, and 25% did not meet, and about 30% kind of partially met. So since that assessment, the town has been, and we've been working with the town with various grants and aid being one of them, I think better roads also, and then just regular work that, Josh and Charlie and Daryl do to bring these segments up to standard. So they've done a lot of work since then, since these numbers I'm telling you about. So the grants and aid program is just like free money or state money that has been made available every year for at least the past 5 years that I know of, to allow you to bring specific segments that do not currently meet up to standard. Now, I believe we still have the fiscal year 24-25 funding, which has not yet been used. That needs to be expended by the end of September, and the amount of that is including a 20% match, about $12,000. The new funding that was just released, which the town would have to approve a letter of intent to participate again this year, because every year the town has to provide its, say it's intending to participate, because then the state takes all these letters of intent, because they have a pool of money, and who, the towns that want to participate, they end up divvying this pool of money among those towns. If not all the towns participate, then everybody gets a little bit more, because it's going across fewer towns. So the letter of intent is important to get out, and I think that's about a couple $1,000s more than last year. So that would be about 14,000, but again, 20% of that is matched, so the actual amount of funding that comes through would be about 11,000 in award for funding to be expended by next September. What else can I tell you about this? The other thing too about it is the standards require that all non-compliant segments be brought up to compliance by 2036. Is that right, Jason? Yes, 2036. And they do track your progress. And there is like fees, annual fees, right? And reporting that needs to be done on these segments each year. And they do look for you to work on what they call high priority segments. And by high priority segments, they typically are road segments that are 10% grade or greater, because those, and again, we're only talking about hydro-connected segments, because those tend to have more runoff and are more susceptible to erosion. So, and it's not just, the idea of the sediment going into the rivers and streams. It also provides for better roads, because with these standards in place, you're going to have roadways that are less likely to erode, and would be just more resilient to flooding events. So there's that plus as well, not just the road quality issue.
So what you're asking us is if we want to sign on to this again.
I think that's what, Jeanette has a letter of intent.
It has a letter of intent for fiscal year 25-26.
And we've done it every year. so
Every
far.
year since 2017. So it's a reimbursement grant, so what happens is usually about this time of year, the guys start doing ditching, and that's some of what we use the rented excavator for sometimes. You've seen the work around town, it's where those great big gray rocks, all the riprap is in the ditches, that's that work.
Okay.
So Howard Hill, anywhere you can think of that's steep, where water runs a lot, so there's been a lot of work done there. And it's worked out just fine. As I said, it's a reimbursement grant, so Cindy works with Charlie, they figure out what project they're gonna work on in any given year, and we keep careful track of all the expenses, and then we fill out a sheet at the end to say that, we spent this. We always spend what they've awarded us, and we're able to work in the match part into that through the labor that gets used. So we get our full amount every time. And it's worked out, it's been pretty seamless year after year.
And we try to work, right, Josh, like when you guys are paving, before you pave, we want to make sure that the segments that are being paved.
Right.
Are part of that.
Exactly.
Last year we did.
And we did that.
The main road.
I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter of intent.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Look at those segments.
It's passed.
It's passed.
Thank you.
There's a folder of stuff for you guys to sign at the end, that letter is in there, you'll see it.
Yeah.
Hydro seeding and all started.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next, which is opening the paving bids, highways and garage.
How many did we get? Three?
Three.
Good. Any companies that we've used before?
Yep, both, all Basin Brothers, Fuller Sand and Gravel, and Jeremy Zulo, I think owns Springfield
How many
Paving.
nails?
Who did this section? Basin? Or was that?
So this is where we were going to ask for
Right here.
Josh's expertise.
I'm trying to remember, maybe, Tom Fuller did the far
Thank
end.
Martha for us,
because he
too.
was doing
Yes, thank you for
Western.
coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But I think so. Tom Fuller did the far end. Tom Fuller's the one who did Hilltop most recently, that did the grinding and stuff. I'm trying to think, I can't remember who paved part of Howard Hill after the flood. I don't remember.
Town of Andover Springfield paving.
Yep,
I want to wait for Josh.
yeah,
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
thank you.
So we're opening the paving bids, and you're here to advise us on who to use.
Josh, they were asking, who paved out here last?
Basin.
Was it Basin? That's what I thought.
So we have Springfield paving,
A couple brain cells left.
and I don't even know really how to read these because I've never looked at a paving bid.
So the prices,
So-
they give you a per unit price at the top.
We have a per
right?
unit of
And how many units they're estimating?
4,470 for 98.20 per unit. And reclaim grade roll and price per square, do you wanna look at this? 378. For a total price of 513.46.36.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, $500,013, 465, $513,465.36 for a total bid.
That's Springfield.
That's Springfield paving. Okay, this is, what's this? Fuller Sand and Gravel. Theirs looks different. They have a tonnage for 4,262 tons at 92 per ton, and reclaimed compact grade of 19,181 square yards at $2 per square yard, and then shouldering of 365. What does CY stand for?
Cubic yards.
Cubic yards, thank you, at $35 per cubic yards. And their total project is $442,926. And that's Fuller. And
Big
then,
difference.
is that all we had? It's two?
No, there's a
it's
third one.
Should have,
It's the
sorry.
printed one right there, I think, in front,
Okay.
from
That should be from
Jeremy Marsden, yeah.
Why do I not see it here?
It's not that one in your folder that's a printed letter.
Andover Selectboard.
Rich was looking at it earlier.
Project description, project complaint, yeah, this is it. Cleaning and hauling units. This one is 4,490 tons at $113.25.
Who is this?
And
Basin Brothers.
Basin Brothers. And they don't give a total, so we would need to,
It's gonna be more. I
yeah.
mean, they're
13 a ton, that's quite a bit.
they're like
Fuller
20.
was what, 98? Jeremy was-
93, right?
Oh, 93.
Yeah.
Jeremy was 98.
Yeah.
It's gonna come in around 480,000.
Yeah.
What do we have in our budget for paving?
Oh, 580.
It's a little less than 500,000 in the highway fund right now.
That one was interesting.
So that's at
Yep.
508.49.2.
And we've worked with all three of these before?
We've only worked, as far as a major paving, would be with Basin and with Fuller. Springfield Paving's done some patches for us and some smaller paving, but nothing this large.
Did we have good luck with Fuller?
Yes.
This price sure looks a lot better.
Yeah, can we just
Do you want,
review them again? So Basin is 508,492,
correct.
right?
Springfield paving is 513,465.36.
Okay, yeah.
And then, what was this other one? Fuller
Fuller.
is, my glasses on, so
Josh
smaller.
Fuller.
442,
Writing down?
Yeah.
Okay,
926.
Take a picture and send it to Charlie.
Yeah,
And you've worked with Fuller before?
Correct.
And what is your take on them?
We thought he does, phenomenal work. We liked Basin, I don't know if I should say this.
No, you should say, well,
They did good work, but it seems like as far as the reclaiming process, they'd work, a little while and then they'd be broke down for a day or two. And then they'd work for a little while. It was just a much longer process than we thought. And then when Fuller had done by the western line, it was like 2 days, he had the whole section all done, shaped up, and ready. It was.
So do you want to look at the bids? Do you want me to pass these around the table, or would you like to look at them?
I'm okay with you reading them out.
Yeah, I was fine with you reading them out
Just going
too.
over those three figures again.
Okay.
All right, so I've got Fuller at 442,926. I got Springfield at 513,465, and Basin at 508,492. So Fuller is lower by 66,000 than the nearest closest bid.
Do they have timelines in these bids at all? Or do they,
That's a good question.
as to when they can do work?
We put specifications in the request for bids that they start, I'm trying to remember the date. The earliest they could start was after Palmer's done with the culverts.
Right. And they had to be done by
October 1st.
October 1st or something.
Yeah.
I remember Charlie had mentioned that.
I want to say like
So-
July 1st to October 1st,
Is when you'd want these guys paid?
Right.
the earliest start.
Okay.
Can we hold out for a recommendation from our road commissioner, or should?
Well, he said.
That's why he's
Josh.
here. That's why Josh is here.
Oh, okay, so you represent Charlie and
Yes.
Chris, okay. And, yeah, okay,
And so his recommend,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
I
can
got- yep.
we need to raise our hands. We're not
I'm
raising our
sorry.
hands.
Go ahead.
So he recommended Fuller. I mean, if you ask, that's
Correct.
right.
Yeah, was what I want is a recommendation.
Can you give me tonnage again, please? If I believe you read.
Now, somebody's was a lot different than theirs.
Yeah.
So, okay. Again,
That's
Or I
not
can
it.
look
That's a
either way. I
municipal
can
excess
look
weight
whatever's
permit.
easier.
Sure.
tonnage.
Or if you want to hand them to Josh to look at.
Oh, here we go.
Whatever's easier for you.
That's easier for me, Josh, because you know what you're looking at. Do you want to do the difference with Springfield versus
Yeah, the,
Fuller?
see all of them.
He's writing notes down.
So, in the RFP that you do, how specific is it as to where the paving needs to be done? I'm just curious because is that something because I wanna see if any of those segments that they're paving need to be,
I mean, it's pretty
Brought up to
specific, like Josh said, it's literally start at the campground and go to the end of North Hill Road.
okay,
And from,
Are you looking for a calculator?
on Middletown
No, I
Road,
was
start
trying
at
to
Route
just
11.
look at tonnage
go to the
wise
edge of
and
the
price
bridge.
just to see.
from Middletown, sorry.
So by
There's a couple that are
Rowell's,
close,
the
or
edge of the
somebody's,
bridge, meaning
way
the
up here
cross
with tonnage or
culvert
way
there,
low.
no,
just
that
to
big,
kind of-
no, that great big, the great big one that just passed Rowell's in, right?
Yeah, that's the one
Just to
that
that
we're
edge.
trying to replace, right? Is that-
No,
No.
no, that's
No,
the
no,
next
no.
one.
Oh, okay.
That's the next one.
Okay.
It's just shy of the Marsh Middletown intersection, from there
Okay.
back to Route 11.
To Route 11, okay. And then from the campground to North Hill.
Correct.
And
And
then-
up,
What else?
How far up North Hill?
North Hill just over the other. But last year we
This is
did
out of my
all those stone.
wheelhouse, so.
The price is so different that,
Oh, you did?
as long as it's
Somebody
apples and
As
oranges.
long as nobody underestimates the amount of tonnage, that's.
Okay.
that's
As long as we're bidding on the same thing,
Have faith in Fuller,
yeah, I mean.
because we've used them
I mean,
before,
yeah,
recently.
Right.
But
You need a gavel.
Josh.
You need to bring it over there.
No, I'd
If
rather
I
have Josh
understand
when
what
he's
Charlie
giving
was
us this.
saying, the other thing that came up was the template that we used from the state of Vermont. They recommend a particular mix, and
Correct.
I don't think any of these three guys actually used that particular mix. They all bid the same thing, but I know at least one of them said that they would use a mix they already have, which would ultimately save the town money.
Quite a bit of money. I think when he,
Was that Tom?
I believe so, because Tom, he makes his own, because he has this pit where a lot of other they have to go like to Cold River to purchase the asphalt because they can't make it. But I want to believe maybe Tom called Charlie and said what we had in our bid sheet was from like 2007 or something. It was like a long time ago, so maybe in the future we should try to get that updated, so if we give them a spec, it's, you know,
It's the actual
present,
stuff.
yeah, and not something that's crazy old. Because he said that's way old, and he goes, that spec, he goes, be a lot of money.
Right, and
So-
I think that all three contractors said the same thing. None of
Correct.
them have access to make that kind of mix.
Right.
Were they all bid in ton, Josh, or is that the difference? Because one of them bid in cubic yards instead of tons?
The cubic yards, from what I was reading, was for road shoulders.
Oh, okay.
But yes, everybody else has done it by the ton.
Cindy, I'll email you the RFP so you have it.
Yeah, just so I have that, and then
Yeah.
I'll just check against the map. That'd be helpful, thank you.
Sure.
I'm gonna leave you all to it, so if it feels better, have them call me.
Yeah, I
We'll
will
get together.
definitely. Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Springfield paving's quite high. I mean, it's $513,000.
Right.
Right. So,
Are the tonnages similar?
Basin and Springfield are within 20 ton. Fuller's quite a bit less tonnage.
Are you concerned about that at all?
I mean, a little bit, but I guess it's.
when you say quite a bit less, I have 92 over here for Fuller.
Correct, and then he has his total tonnage, so he's at 4262.
Yeah, that's what we have. Yeah, 4262.
And then
Yeah.
if you go to Springfield paving, they have 4470, and Basin is 4490. So you're two,
But they're less than 10%
200.
right.
different. I think the least was 4262 and the most was,
The most is 4490 Basin.
okay.
5%.
But I mean, Basin's
128.
also,
Yeah, there's 128 tons different. And that's, 128 divided by 4262.
But even if you had to bring in more product, his price per
Yeah, that's my
ton
concern.
is less though.
yeah, I mean, he's 92.
His price per is less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Fuller is 92 per ton.
It's
Springfield's
$11,000 more if you brought in,
Right.
you had to bring in to match.
Yeah.
And then,
But it would still
It's
be the
still
cheapest by far.
significantly, yeah, it's by far it's the cheapest.
And you said they
Even
did a
with the-
phenomenal job, yeah. So,
I make a motion that we accept the Fuller.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I,
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Sorry we made you wait so long. Thank you for your help with that,
Anything else?
yeah.
No.
Is he the road commissioner? Is he gonna give us a report? I'm sorry.
Are you giving us the road commissioner report today as well? or-
Well, I got a couple questions for you if you don't.
New truck.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. When you get your new truck and what roads?
Well, let's move on to the
road.
road commissioner. So we'll go out of this and we'll go to the highways. And we are, yes, so there you go.
The new truck has been back to Viking. They fixed a few problems that I had with the truck. It's back. Now it's at ETG, so they can rhino line the 45-degree angles on the body everywhere like your material would hit. So it's a little stronger. It's still there, so I haven't heard back. I called Craig Friday, he said he was on the road. He goes, I'll get back to you, but I haven't heard from him yet, so I would hope
We're getting there though.
sooner than later get here and we can use it.
At least you won't have to plow with it.
I know, right? Stay on salt this year, right? Grading wise today, I got a good chunk of East Hill done. I skipped a few spots that are kind of wet, and then I did the far end. I did from Schmidt all the way down the line because that was
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I hit 2 spots on North Hill that were very similar pothole wise. You couldn't go around them anymore. And then I did Middletown from West Andover Road down to Gene Patagus's.
Nice.
And I hadn't made it down further to see. I'm guessing in the trees it's probably fairly wet still.
We've gotten an email. Sorry, I'm just going here.
Right?
But we've gotten an email about some limbs on North Hill. I don't know anything about them, but it came in like Friday night.
I believe you, Rich, spoke with Charlie.
Yeah, I spoke to Charlie, and Charlie sent an email response. So you followed up, I think, with Charlie, and then Charlie, I think, sent a response saying things are being worked on.
Okay.
And then he didn't feel like any of the limbs were a hazard.
I know Saturday he went out and he said I cut a few. He says just to get them a little further off the road. He goes, I didn't think it was an issue, but he didn't know when they were going around sanding and stuff like that. He had cut a few limb wires out on North Hill.
Great.
Alright. So now we're to old business, the MERP grant. Did we have,
I think we kind of covered that with,
right,
didn't we? With, did we move that up, right?
we
To
did.
include it with the,
Well, we are at a place where, Susan had asked, we're at a place where we just kind of sit and wait for the architect to all the pieces to come together. And then they will let us know when they would start looking at the project and what they would be doing. So we're kind of in a holding pattern with looking at the asbestos or the vermiculite in our ceilings and then moving forward. That's all I have to report on that. Do you have anything else you'd like to say on that?
Nope.
That you've heard? No.
wait. Oh, not on that
I'm
one.
sorry.
One question.
Yeah.
Would down here, as far as Jeanette and people coming back in after it's the asbestos is removed, if it is, would down here need to be like thoroughly cleaned at all? Do we know?
So I'm
anything about
that's a good
that?
question, but I would guess that part of that whole looking at it and taking care of it would be part of that. They're not
Okay.
going to let it just.
No, I just didn't know if we.
But that is a good
if it had
question, yeah.
A deep clean down
Right.
here with.
Yeah. But I think it's somebody that has to do that.
Okay, right.
That
Or
is
mitigate it to
certified.
mitigate the whole building.
Right.
That might make it worse before they make it better, but
Right.
It's not bad, only little pieces fall through the hole in the ceiling.
Okay, so now we're on to the financial orders.
They are in your to be signed folder. Minutes are in there from both meetings, all the financials, the letter of intent to participate in grants and aid. Rich and Robin, you met with us with Megan Brunk to do our annual highway budgeting process, so that is in there to be signed. That is, what is that? I think that's the letter of intent. Everybody just kind of needs to sign above that line, I think.
Above this line right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just
we'll
throw
leave it.
signatures in there. It says everybody. I'm not sure why they didn't make an appropriate space, but. Oh, official.
Roads and Bridge Theory.
And you're also signing that you know that we are in compliance with road and bridge standards, which we are. Because Megan told us so. That's what she came up with.
you didn't leave me any space.
Right
I
there.
want to make a
Try to
little,
go small, Chris.
look at that, nice little
Right.
signature off to the side. I won't use that one. That one goes back in the folder.
Here's the 14.
the grader. Holding up.
Now, I don't sign these because I've already signed them all.
Right, you don't sign those, you pass them down the table.
I signed one of them, sorry folks.
Scrapper keeper, sticky.
I know, tape on it.
All right.
I sign it.
Chambers.
I've asked you this before, I don't need to sign that because I've approved them, or do I need to sign it?
No, that's just your printer name and designating you as the chair,
So I do
or
that.
identifying you as the chair.
Wasn't
So
sure
yes,
if
you
it
should sign
meant that I wrote them out or.
It's like, we're just needing meeting minutes.
Falling behind.
Let's go in here.
A lot of paper.
I know, and I've got it all
Here you go.
mixed up.
Almost, that's not quite done almost.
Already missed that one. It all messed with me.
So, do we have to?
That's weird, why is there
I think it
nobody?
was stuck to the bottom of that one.
Oh, okay.
It's-
I'm guessing that, yeah. Jeanette, do you do the correspondence for the paving?
You need
or
to sign
do-
that one was stuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the rest of these. There, all right. Susan, just stick that one on top because everybody, you guys have to sign it still. They have to sign it. It got stuck to one of the others.
Sorry. What happened?
You have to sign
You
it
have to
too.
sign it.
I missed one?
It was stuck.
It came down here without any signatures.
Good catch.
Now we're moving on to correspondence.
There isn't any.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.